The Xeric Dominion had conquered every Deathworld they had encountered. Until now. High Overlord Vanek watched from the command throne of his dreadnought as the first wave of his invasion force descended through Earth's atmosphere. The battle reports had already been calculated. Humanity, by all metrics, was primitive. Their weapons outdated. Their numbers insufficient. This would be another swift planetary conquest, another world added to the Xeric's unbroken chain of dominion. Yet as the first battalions landed, something strange happened. Silence. No surrender. No desperate pleas. Just the eerie, unsettling quiet of a species waiting. Then the world exploded. The first strike came from below. Explosions erupted across the landing zones, not from sophisticated orbital weaponry, but from the terrain itself. Entire Xeric platoons disappeared as roads collapsed, buildings detonated, and forests became killing grounds. The humans hadn't been caught off guard. They had been waiting. What is this? Vanek demanded, his claws tightening around his command throne as the holofeeds flickered with chaos. Where is their army? A trembling officer turned, his normally rigid Xeric posture unsteady. Sir, the humans aren't fighting in formations. They're not sending fleets or armies. They're... The screen before Vanek cut to a new feed, a squadron of heavily armored Xeric soldiers pinned in a narrow city street, their plasma rifles searching for a target. The air was thick with smoke. Visibility was low. Then the first human appeared. No armor. No uniform. Just a ragged figure in scavenged gear, holding a makeshift launcher scavenged from Xeric tech. It fired. The screen went dark as the squad ceased to exist. The officer turned back, voice quivering. They're hunting us. Lieutenant Elias Rourke exhaled slowly as the transport ship he had hijacked circled the wreckage of what had once been a Xeric landing zone. The flames below cast long, hungry shadows across the ruined terrain. The first wave was done. But there would be more. He pressed his comms. Sector 9, confirm status. A voice crackled through. 2 battalions down. The rest are scattering. Some are trying to regroup. Rourke allowed himself a thin smile. Let them. Humanity had spent decades fighting amongst itself, perfecting war, evolving under pressure. The Xeric thought this was a war. They had no idea what war was. High Overlord Vayanek's breathing was measured, but his mind was racing. Never, never had an invasion gone so wrong this quickly. He turned to his second-in-command. Deploy the aerial divisions. Flatten their infrastructure. Burn their strongholds to the ground. The officer hesitated. My lord, there are no strongholds. They're cities, they left them empty. The realization struck like a thunderbolt. The humans had evacuated before the invasion even began. The cities weren't battlegrounds. They were traps. And the Xeric had walked straight into them. In the darkness of an abandoned subway station, Rourke and his team watched the orbital bombardments begin. The sky burned with plasma fire, entire city blocks reduced to scorched glass. And yet, there was no fear in his men. Only patience. Because they weren't in the cities anymore. The war had already moved underground. Into the forests. The mountains. The ruins the Xeric didn't know existed. Rourke watched as the Xeric attempted to regroup. They still didn't understand. This wasn't an invasion. This was the hunt. And humans? Humans were the apex predators. Cliffhanger ending. A desperate transmission flickered onto Vayanek's war table. A Xeric officer, bleeding, voice shaking, whispering as if he feared something in the dark. They're not fighting like any species we've conquered before. Vayanek's mandibles tightened. Then how are they fighting? The officer swallowed. Then, just before the feed cut to black, he whispered. Like they've been waiting for this. High Overlord Vayanek stood in the heart of the Xeric command chamber, eyes locked onto the holographic battlefield before him. The invasion had turned into something else. Something wrong. He had led over 50 planetary subjugations, each an efficient, methodical execution of warfare. Never once had a species refused to die correctly. But here? The humans did not break. They did not surrender. They did not behave like any species the Xeric had ever encountered. They fought like a predator that had just smelled blood. On the surface of Earth, the Xeric forces were unraveling. Plasma strike teams moved through ruined city streets, their sensors sweeping for hostiles, yet all they found were ghosts. Movement in the shadows. Flickers of heat signatures, then nothing. They advanced carefully, armor plating humming with energy fields. They were the apex species. They were conquerors. A wall detonated. Molten steel and razor-sharp debris ripped through their ranks. Screams echoed through the comms. The survivors scrambled for cover, scanning frantically for an enemy they still hadn't seen. Then the voice came. Human. Calm. Precise. Welcome to Earth. And then the second wave hit. Lieutenant Rourke crouched low in the rubble, eyes locked onto the remains of the Xeric squad. His men were already repositioning, moving between the ruins like shadows in a burning city. The first strike had shattered the Xeric's confidence. The second had made them hesitate. The third would make them afraid. He tapped his comms. Team Delta, you're up. A few seconds of silence. Then, a hacked Xeric transmission broadcast across their fleet. It was raw. Unfiltered. The dying gasps of their own soldiers. The sounds of laughter in the darkness. The Xeric listened. And they understood. This wasn't a war. This was a massacre. Vayanek's claws tightened. He had deployed the full strength of an empire upon this primitive world, and in return, he had lost entire divisions in a matter of days. No fortresses. No standing armies. No fleets. And yet, his forces were being shredded. His second-in-command turned, voice laced with something alien to their kind. Fear. My lord, we must consider a strategic withdrawal. Vayanek turned slowly, his gaze cold, calculating. You suggest, retreat? The officer hesitated. This is unlike anything we have ever faced. They fight differently. There is no logic. No predictability. Vayanek's claws slashed across the officer's throat. The body crumpled, lifeblood pooling at his feet. The remaining commanders stiffened, mandibles clicking in unison. There will be no retreat, Vayanek growled. We burn this world. We break them. We show them what it means to stand against the Dominion. The bridge fell into silence. And then the ship's lights flickered. The sound of static hissed through the war table. Then a voice. Deep. Human. Amused. You can try. And just like that, the Xeric dreadnought systems began to fail. Cliffhanger ending. Vayanek watched in horror as his warship's targeting systems turned against them. The humans had hacked the fleet. One by one, the Xeric dreadnoughts lost control. The battle was no longer one of firepower. It was one of domination. High Overlord Vayanek had never known fear. Until now. His war fleet, the pride of the Xeric Dominion, was in ruins. Entire dreadnoughts floated lifeless in orbit, their once mighty hulls torn apart from within. The humans had taken control, turning Xeric systems against themselves. From the shattered remains of his flagship, he watched in silence as the invasion force disintegrated, not in a glorious battle, but in absolute chaos. And the worst part? He still didn't understand how. On the surface of Earth, Lieutenant Elias Rourke stood among the wreckage of the final battle. The last of the Xeric ground forces had been hunted down, not by orbital strikes or overwhelming numbers, but by the kind of warfare humans had perfected over millennia. The Xeric fought like an empire. Humans fought like survivors. Rourke watched as his teams moved through the battlefield, gathering weapons, salvaging what tech they could. They weren't just winning this war. They were learning. Evolving. A message flashed across his HUD, fleet battle, orbit secured. He exhaled. It was over. For now. On board the wreckage of the Zurich dreadnought, Vanek staggered through the ruined halls, his breathing ragged. His empire had never known defeat. Now, they would never recover. The emergency broadcast system crackled to life. Through the distortion, a voice filtered through, cold and deliberate. Vanek. The warlord turned slowly, mandibles clicking. Who are you? The shadows flickered. Then a human stepped into the dim light. Tall. Battle-worn. The face of everything Vanek's kind had tried to erase. Lieutenant Elias Rourke. You lost, Rourke said simply. Vanek bared his fangs. You are nothing. You're kind, primitive, weak. Rourke's expression never changed. And yet, here I stand. Silence. Then Rourke took a slow step forward. Tell me, Overlord. How many species did you crush before us? How many worlds did you leave burning? Vanek clenched his fists. You cannot stop the Dominion. Rourke's head tilted slightly. Oh, I know. He tapped his comms. That's why we're sending a message. The Zurich's remaining comm systems flared to life, broadcasting a signal across every known Dominion world. A simple message. A warning. They came to conquer a Deathworld. They left in ashes. Rourke stared down at Vanek one last time. Then he turned. The detonation sequence activated. Vanek's final roar of defiance was drowned out in a firestorm as the last Zurich warship exploded, shattering the remains of their once great empire. Final scene. From the ruins of the battlefield, a human transmission spread across the stars. Humanity is not just another species. We are not prey. We are not weak. We are the storm. Come. Try again.